Hello. Today we are talking about lockers in North America, and my guest today is Tessa Turner. Hi, Tessa. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Finally, we have snow and we have proper cold also, so as it should be in Estonia.
Well, we've been getting a lot of rain in California, so it seems to be everywhere.
Yeah, it is. But let's wrap up today, last year, 2025, and look for the 2026 also. Uh, 2025 was um, quite an important year for you personally. You changed your company, but you kept it also in the lockers. That is the most important thing.
Yeah, it's been very interesting. I've been working in, North American locker procurement production for a while now. And so to move to a global company that also does lockers has been pretty interesting. There's the perception, and I posted about this before, that North America doesn't have lockers, which is so silly considering, I previously deployed over 30,000 of them across North America and Canada. So constantly having to retell people that I interact with in Europe and EMEA and stuff that, no, I promise the United States does have lockers. You just don't see them very often because they're, locked behind closed doors has been quite a conversation.
Yeah, for everybody who has not yet following Tessa LinkedIn, definitely I suggest to do that because they are very deep and professional posts there. So definitely go and take a look. But lockers in North America, yeah, you said that they are not so seen, but probably there are still thousands, if not tens of thousands, of lockers already, and as we predict here, it's going to be inevitable that also North America will open to the lockers. But what is the reason for that? It can be technology in a sense that the US is the most advanced technological country in whatever technology. Is it the reason that home delivery is so well established and the carriers really have mastered the home delivery so well that there is no need for the lockers so far?
Yeah, I would say that, the United States is very fragmented from a jurisdictional perspective. So politically, it can be very intimidating for a locker company to go out there and have to deal with compliancy and governance. And so home delivery is, for the multifamily community in terms of lockers in apartment buildings and condos and student housing, that's a well-established vertical. That's where the majority of, United States and Canadian lockers are. University mail, that kind of thing. So, but home delivery, yeah, the United States does have a lot of rural areas, and then there are a lot of legacy, logistics companies. So I would say three of the big four, like UPS, FedEx, USPS, have technology. And we've talked about this before on LinkedIn that, a lot of that infrastructure was built in the late 80s, early 90s. So it's not so easy to come in and integrate. Whereas Europe did a much better job of doing, the API integration. So it was much easier for locker companies to come in and partner with them. But you also had a couple of them like UPS and FedEx get burned pretty badly around 2015 embracing lockers. They spent quite a bit of CapEx money, millions and millions of dollars, because they saw what Europe was doing 10 years ago. And then the United States just, the public didn't really use public infrastructure. We don't have high-speed rail that's very popular. A lot of people do not use the bus. Most people are car-driven. And so you had UPS spend millions of dollars and then deploy these lockers. They didn't get used, and then they spent millions of dollars to rip them out. So, you have these big players that now are doubly shy of embracing locker infrastructure. And so, uh, we see kind of a different thing. I would say Canada is a little bit more advanced in that area, though, because their urban density, right? There's less people living in rural areas, so a lot more people concentrated in urban density. their logistics infrastructure is a little bit more modern, so it's easier to layer on top of lockers, but the United States has a little bit of work to go in that aspect.
In Canada also the weather component I think is important because the weather is a bit harsher than in US, and then you can't leave the parcels to the porch in heavy rain or heavy snow, so this helps also a little bit. But we met last year in Amsterdam, Post and Parcel Expo, and it was quite a turning point for me also in my whole career in lockers business. It was the first time where lockers were so prominently present at last mile event, and let's say 1/3 of the exhibition was full of lockers. So what was your impressions from the Amsterdam event? Big booth, a lot of lockers. I think you enjoyed it as.
Yeah, so it's quite fascinating that in the United States, if you go to a trade show, there might only be 2 or 3 locker companies that are there. And then you go to Parson, Postal, and there are 20 to 30 different locker companies. And what's fascinating is I was looking at the National Retail Federation conference that's next week in New York, which is one of the bigger shows for locker companies. And again, there would be 2 or 3, and then I was quite fascinated that there are actually like 10 or 20 different locker companies there. You see a lot more Chinese manufacturers that are going to be at National Retail Federation. So I think that foreign inclusion of lockers is definitely coming more to the United States, and you'll see a lot more locker companies come to the United States.
Yeah, hopefully. But what comes to that technology, is there, in your view, any difference in European models and US lockers, or the technology or the approach is similar?
I would say theft is a lot more rampant in the United States. So I think that in what I've seen in Europe and Asia is that, there is this embracing of the commons, like there is this shared, desire from the populace, right, to take care of things, to protect things, so the thickness of the steel is usually a big difference to me, whereas theft is very rampant in the United States. You might see a lot thicker doors because pry attempts and theft happens more rapidly in the United States. And then obviously the United States is more heavily regulated in terms of like accessibility compliance. Like I know Europe passed just within the last 6-7 months stringent accessibility challenges, but California kind of leads the way globally in terms of what is required for wheelchair turn radius, reach, that type of stuff. So I posted about FedEx a couple months ago getting themselves in trouble because they embraced a hardware partner that didn't meet the accessibility challenges. So that's why it's really important. Bloq.it is, on top of all those things, right? We meet all the regulations, but I have seen instances where people have embraced certain Chinese technology in terms of lockers, and then they've gotten themselves in some very big trouble because it didn't meet the jurisdictional regulations of the state, county, or, even city that they live in terms of like UL compliance and accessibility and things like that.
This is probably going to be quite a big thing in upcoming years, and what you exactly mentioned, regulations on municipality level, maybe technically from the state level or government level. This is one thing definitely our industry has to face more seriously to help to develop the rules, because this is the municipalities are not specialist in out of home. So I think this is one thing we have to take also our responsibility to try to work out the regulation of the local networks.
Yeah, and there are a lot of companies also that are expressing interest in like location acquisition. So I think that's also a big difference between Europe and the United States, where, most of the people you're partnering with in Europe from a locker manufacturer perspective, they already know where they want to put that locker most of the time. They have a pretty good idea. Whereas in the United States, the people you're partnering with really do want that help, whether it's like GIS technology and sourcing and recommending the best place, and then they need help with permitting, regulation, that kind of stuff too. So whomever is there, from a Bloq.it perspective or whatnot, clients are asking for that is like, please help us navigate these regulations as we deploy lockers because, you might be dealing with 6 different government agencies that are interacting with you.
Yeah, absolutely right. And there is also the next step is that the clients will ask help for installing lockers, and next they will ask help of maintaining lockers. So in a sense that this locker industry is a bit different than the traditional technology sales, let's say car sales or whatever. So you are selling the car and then you are on your own, but locker needs constantly maintenance and control and advising. So definitely interesting point. But you mentioned the locations, and then again, probably this was one of the biggest keyword last year. The location. Everybody in Europe was talking about location because, you know, when you start the business, the first 100 or first 1,000 locations are quite easy to spot because if you have to find somebody who knows the city and he finds sort of intuitively the right places. But the next 1,000, next 10,000, this is not anymore. You have to automate it. You have to have some kind of special system helping you spotting the location, testing the location, making all the agreements and regulation things. So this is probably also one thing I think that will go on this year. Different services, how to deploy lockers, starting from the location scouting, ending with installation and this kind of services.
Yeah, absolutely. What locker company is not out there installing the actual lockers?
There are still a lot of companies who are just selling the lockers and sending them out from the factory, and that's it.
Yeah, and when that's why I really, as an operator, right, enjoy working with the client because their pain point is not buying a locker. It's not, hey, I need to buy this thing. Anyone can go online and buy a locker, right? The pain point is, here's my issue. I have a volatile labor market, right? And I need a return solution that can help me offset rising costs of labor or unstaffed counters or, customer whatever it is, or I'm a property manager and I am getting 1,000 incoming packages a week and I need to focus on lease ups, right? So the pain point that our customers have is not actually procuring the locker. It's, hey, let me craft a technological hybrid hardware solution for you and take that pain point off your shoulders. So locker companies that are so narrowly focused and they're not actually installing the lockers and really being a true partner with their clients, I think they do a disservice to the industry by being that. So I've never worked for a locker company that, just said, buy the hardware from us and then we'll forget you and we'll let you go. So, you really need that whole total thing where it's part of, we're going to advise you on the hardware, the app, the governance, the compliance, the infrastructure, politics, the sequencing, and we're really going to support you in that. And I think, you'll see some people engage with these little boutique locker manufacturers and then they'll only buy a few, and then typically they'll come to you and be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I made a mistake, can you help me? Now I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, and this is not actually solving my pain point here. So yeah, it'll be we'll see that continue. And I know we were talking about returns, and I was looking at the numbers after this holiday season, and in America, 17% of all purchases will return back to a retailer. And, minimum wage increased in the United States and I think over 20 different states. And so, they have Amazon that continues to take e-commerce service, right? So the malls, they say malls are dying and stuff, but people do want to go out and interact at the mall and see face to face, right? People still do want that human connection. So it's like, I think return solutions like we have at Bloq.it is, can really help with that too, because now you have something, that is unstaffed where people can do a return and it's very easy. And from a labor perspective, you're not burdened by that extra human that then has to stand there and take negative equity back from a retailer perspective.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you that the return lockers might be sort of the entry products for several markets. I just recently advised one client whose decision was that they will not start with traditional lockers, but they will start with return lockers because they have very well organized home delivery. This is not the problem for them, but returns are. And with return lockers, installing them, you can educate customers to use lockers. The interface is the same as the traditional locker. So if you and customers' incentive to return parcel is much bigger than receiving it. So with that, you can teach customers to use lockers, and it's again only small step then to install also lockers, traditional lockers for delivery. So especially in US, I think that this could be a real winner product or entry product for many customers to teach sort of technology and lockers.
Yeah, and many people don't know in the United States too that there is, over, I would say, probably 200,000 dumb drop boxes sitting on street corners across the United States, whether it's a blue box from USPS, a white FedEx box, or a brown UPS box. And they're not technology. And a driver drives a route. They go, 4 or 5 times a day, and they open the box and see if there's a package, and then they shut the box and leave. And in a lot of rural areas, they may not get a box for a couple days. So you literally just have a driver expanding CO2 emissions, checking to see if they're in a box. So I really see that segment as ripe for locker companies to come in and swoop up that business and turn it into a smart solution that reduces, CO2 emissions. Like currently, the administration in the United States doesn't seem to care about sustainability, but a lot of these companies still have global ESG, commitments. UPS does to decarbonize and stuff. So from a global perspective, they still need to do something from a governance perspective to meet those goals. So I do can't wait to deploy hundreds of thousands of drop boxes in the United States under Bloq.it, but I do think that's really going to push the locker community along in the United States.
There is one more thing that US is different from Europe, and this is the urban behavior. US is very car centric, and Europe this is there are people still walking yet. So I think that what comes to US, the industry should definitely invent the proper drive-in parcel locker. So because you have really huge parking lots, and there is actually the space is there. Parking lot is very good location to install a locker, but maybe you have to one more step to invent, not invent. Actually, the solution already are drive-in locker, so that you don't need to come out of the car and you can get like any fast food or any drive-in your parcel.
Yeah, and what's interesting is there is a quiet shift happening from a mail perspective too. We call them CBUs in the United States, cluster box units. So most new housing that's being developed, not single family homes, they are not building mailboxes on a home anymore. They're building these neighborhood cluster box units, and they're very heavily regulated by USPS. And people are starting to embrace that, where it's half a block, right? It's not like
Okay.
very far at all, but most people now stop there and get their mail. And if it's a package from USPS, they get it from these dumb cluster box units. But they have a mechanical key that opens them, and if you follow any of the USPS governance people, that it is the dumbest thing in 2026 to have a global key that opens all of these cluster box units that gets stolen, misplaced. The theft is very rampant. This is very thin steel, and that's what's really pushing citizens to advocate to the government that, like, hey, our mail is getting stolen. We have identity theft going on. So yeah, I think that, this car-centric world, there is a place still where we have community infrastructure from a mail and a package technology perspective. Right now, there's no technology involved, but the United States Postal Office has a lot of money, trillions of dollars that they're investing in upgrading the technology there. So we will see that come. And once it goes, right, I think USPS will be the first. Once they embrace it from a mail perspective, then we'll see a lot more of those.
It's my guess also that the USPS will probably be the first mover for whatever reasons, but yeah, this is my belief also. Thank you, Tessa. It was really nice talking to you and then talking about lockers. This is my privilege, and I really enjoy that. I hope that this year we are going to see more often than last year. It was once only last year, so hopefully we will see more. I'm planning to visit also US this year definitely. So hopefully we will see there.
Yeah, let me know what trade shows you're at, and thank you for all your support in pushing the locker community along from a global perspective. Can't do it without you, so really appreciate you.
Thank you and have a nice year.
Thanks.